Heyo, 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 everybody. It's me, HHC Snowman, where our motto is AAA games that I love, indies that intrigue me, and nostalgia games that I can't forget. Alright, we're playing today Power Wash Simulator. Why are we playing this? I'm a fool. Alright, well, this looks like an iPad, which is kind of cool. Shop, career, specials, items. Where's start game? Oh, start career. Juggle weird and wonderful cleaning jobs and try to make their new power wash business a success. Look, I'll be honest, guys. I found two other games that I would much rather play, but both of those, I think I want guest appearances because both of them love each specific game respectively. So I'm going to pick the one thing that I am mildly interested in playing, while also don't think anyone else would be interested in playing. Clean the van, home garage, $150. Really? $150 just for cleaning the van? I mean, I guess it is pretty. It is muy sucio, as my people would say. Great news! Finally found a van for you at the auctions under your budget. Don't freak out when you see it. It looks like it's been dredged from the bottom of a lake. It may have. This may be a murderer's van. Controls. Oh gosh. Washer is right trigger. Oh, phew. Thought I was gonna keep moving that. No. All right then. Alley-oop. Oh, that's great. That's okay. Can I switch my? Wait, can I? Ooh, okay, interesting. I can crouch. I can get down. I can rotate the Oh, very fun. I can switch nozzles. Ooh, here we go. Okay, okay. Let's try this. You all know what I'm doing. Wow. Yeah. Always got to tag your territory. Ah, look at that. That seems pretty satisfying. I don't know about you guys. Indicator cleaned. So people tell me this game is super relaxing. Good to get you in a nice, well, for lack of a better term, a zen place. The only zen place I ever feel is when I'm taking a massive dump. Harper Shaw, there's a removals van outside my nightmare neighbor's place. They're finally going. Whoever moves in there is going to need a quality pressure washer. Ah. My business grows. My empire grows. Soon all will kneel before the superiority of my power washing skills. Shall all be cleansed. Cleansed. Cleansed of your filth. Cleansed of your dirty hubcaps. Cleansed of your sins. You know, this would be a lot scarier if I was holding, like, say, a flamethrower. Power washer just doesn't emit the same sort of aura. You know what I'm saying? Womp, womp, womp. Oh, now the door is cleaned. Can I even get to the roof? Okay, hang on a second, guys. I just got a text. Alright, back to the cleaning. Womp, 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 womp. Where was I? Ah, yes. Cleanse you of your sins. Cleanse you of your filth. Cleanse you of your need to drive through dirty puddles and jump in the spaces between the cracked concrete where all the water from the rain accumulates because your city refuses to do the one thing it was said it must do according to the social contract that is your taxes. John Locke spoke of this, but so did Thomas Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. All had very different meanings about... You know what? We're fine. We're doing this, guys. We're talking about the social contract. So the social contract is basically a political idea that emerged around the time of the English Revolution, although I'm sure the idea in a more basic form had been around for a lot longer. Basically, the idea is that, no, the government doesn't just get to do whatever it wants by divine right of kings. Instead, the proper right of government derives from the consent of the governed. And as such, the government has a unspoken, although sometimes it is spoken or written in a constitution, a contract with the people, a social contract. And if this contract is ever broken, things happen, depending on who you ask. Anyway, my point being, John Locke believed that this social contract was the idea that the government had a obligation to serve the people, to protect their God-given rights, that being of life, liberty, and property. Pursuit of happiness would be nomenclature introduced by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. And in the context of his time, he meant pursuit of happiness as in the pursuit of property. Because at the time, what could possibly make you happier than secureness in real estate? That is a vast oversimplification, but that is essentially what he meant. Anyway, point being, John Locke believed that in the state of nature, as in before man set up government, man was just fine. But the reason he set up government was to find a more efficient way of protecting his God-given rights of life, liberty, and property. And such, he created the government. That way, man would have a more efficient way of protecting the rights of himself and his neighbors, and to assure the life, liberty, and happiness of himself and his neighbors. So yeah, if a man killed your dog, or, God forbid, one of your relatives, you would have a God-given right to kill them back. However, that becomes real messy. You have to kill people. You have to go hunt this guy down. What's worse, what if you're wrong? What if instead you end up killing your neighbor who didn't actually do the crime? As such, man sets up government to create a system of laws, law enforcement, and courts to be a more efficient way of protecting their rights and making sure that true justice is served. And if the government ever gets out of line and doesn't protect your rights, you have the ability, nay, the moral obligation to overthrow said government and set up a new one that will protect the rights of you and your neighbors. Harper Shaw. You gonna go with that business name, or do you need me to think something up? I'm phenomenal. I thought up Grouting Thomas. Okay, something you gotta know about me, guys. If you haven't figured it out already, I have a supreme weakness for puns. And Grouting Thomas and Bonnie Tyler, that is just unbelievably stupid and clever at the same time. Shout out to Tyler. Anyway, as I was saying, Thomas Hobbes believed differently. Thomas Hobbes believed that in the state of nature, man was in a state of violence, of anarchy, and chaos, and government was necessary to save man from his baser nature. Now, this is quite a different way of viewing these sorts of things. They both believe in a social contract, both believe that the state of nature, but they have very different interpretations on whether that's a good thing, how necessary government is, and what its scope and role is. Now, there is also a concept known as the will of the people. Now, obviously, if you ask somebody like John Locke, he would say, obviously, the will of the people needs to be determined through the process of democracy, or, in more specific terms, a representative republic. Jean-Jacques Rousseau had a very different take on this. He believed that there was something called the general will of the people. Essentially, he believed that people oftentimes were not smart enough to know what they wanted. As such, you needed a strong government, and perhaps even a strong man at the head of said government, to divine what the true general will of the people was. Because the people, more often than not, would not know what they truly wanted. If this sounds a little bit like Steve Jobs' Apple, congratulations, you understand Rousseauian government politics. Also, if this sounds vaguely communist to you, well, a lot of the ideas of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the early revolutionaries of France and those sort of thinkers was very proto-communist in some ways. At least that's the way I interpret it. I suppose under classical definitions, I might get in some hot water for saying that, but that is one of the ways that I've interpreted it. I encourage you to come to your own conclusions. Anyway, all that to say, John Locke was someone who really influenced the founders and the early citizens of America. It was said that when an American father passed away in the early colonies, he would pass on 2 books to his children, the Bible and John Locke's second treatise on government, which talks about many of these ideas. You ever wonder what happened to John Locke's first treatise on government? That one isn't passed around as much because it mostly is about debunking the divine right of kings. So that's something we've kind of gotten past and are already well convinced of. So it's not as evergreen as a title as the second treatise on government, whose ideas still resonate in today's society. Now, Thomas Hobbes, believing that society needed government, also believed that the rights didn't necessarily come from God. Now, whether you believe in God or not, the important distinction here is that he believed men had rights because the government gave them rights. The government wrote down their rights in laws, therefore, man had those rights. The government is your savior. The government gives you these rights, and if they didn't write them down, you don't have them. This is a very bad thing. If there is no objective higher standard outside of government that gives you these rights, then it is just as easy for the government to give them away as to grant you with said rights. Not good. You can see this in a lot of communist societies, specifically the more extreme ones like communist China, the Soviet Union, and North Korea, where these are highly atheistic societies. And again, the whole point is not necessarily that they don't believe in God, it's the fact that there is no higher standard for where your rights come from, and under these societies... Oh, I do have a stepping... Oh my... That was here the whole time! Oh my gosh, where are my feet? Oh, the sheep, mere sheep. Anyway, that's what a communist government would say, because they don't believe that the people actually have those rights outside of what they grant them. Let's get something bigger. Anyway, point being, that is very dangerous for society. And I think Western civilization is still trying to figure out how they can keep these rights, well provided for in sort of a post-God society. Maybe that's impossible. I'll leave you that to judge. But the point being, a lot of our freedoms and way of thinking as far as the individualistic nature of rights apart from the government came about in a chain of events and political and religious thought that can be traced directly back to the Protestant Reformation. And if you're going to toss those away, you better be dang sure you got something good to replace it. Kind of like when the space shuttle program was decommissioned, but nobody had a good idea of what was going to replace it, so we just paid the Russians about, tens of millions of dollars or it might have been billions actually, for just one seat on their Soyuz spacecraft. I realize that metaphor may not have made things any clearer, but may have in fact muddied the waters. I'm sorry, I love space. Space! You're going to have to make do with the space metaphors. Anyway, that was your Civics 101 course from HHC Snowman, which I'm sure none of you asked for. If I just had like a rag and some soap, I probably could finish this out pretty quick. At this point, using a power washer for touch-ups seems a little bit inefficient. Just saying. Look, I've cleaned my fair share of cars. Despite what the condition of my own car would lead you to believe, I do know how to clean a car. Oh my gosh, where is the last little bit? Free me from this purgatory. This has got to be somebody's, absolute purgatory, right? If you guys have ever read Dante's Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, if you've ever read any of those, you'll know that in Purgatory, you were given a very specific task, like an oddly specific task, to cleanse you of that specific sin. So, if you were guilty of gluttony, you'll be put in front of a tree full of succulent apples and not be allowed to eat them for 100 years or more. So what was my sin in this world that I am sentenced to power washing every single little detail on this fan? Was I not diligent enough in cleaning? That gotta be it. That has to be it. I just let everything get lazy. I was a lazy man who did not clean anything, and now I am forced to clean all the nooks and crannies of this van for 100 years until my living descendants decide to come to my aid and pay for an indulgence to spring me into paradise. That is my backstory, guys. I bet you didn't know that. This story is a secret Catholic game. Somebody call up MatPat. I've solved the game. Ha! Secret volcano. Secret forces in this community. No, it was Catholicism the whole time. Where is the last piece? Oh, is it? Oh, it's the top. It's the top, guys. Can I jump on top? Oh my, I could be up here the whole time. Oh. I miss my wife, guys. I miss her a lot. I'll be back. Now it's 10:30 at night. I'm not gonna call my wife tonight. Let's just finish the power washing and get out of purgatory. What would the Pope think? Pretty sure there were several times in history where there were like multiple popes at the same time. Just a battle of the popes. Calvin Miller! Is this the extraordinary Dr. Powerwash? I got your details from your friend Harper. I could really do with a hand. No! Oh. Oh, a time lapse. Look at my amazing posture. Van looks fantastic. Told you you'd be fine under the grime. I pinged you the 100 left over from what you gave me, so that should help you off the ground. Also, just met my new neighbor over the fence, grumbling about his dirty backyard, and told him to give you a shout. Looks like you've got your first customer. New neighbor over the fence? Who's your new neighbor, Wilson? Oh. Clean the back garden. Well, you know, as long as this gives me opportunities to go on long rants about things I like talking about, and hopefully you like listening to it. There's our co-op mode!